Over the past 10 years, there haven't been many actresses that have had a more serious downward trajectory in their career than Daisy Ridley. 10 years ago, when Star Wars The Force Awakens premiered with Ridley in the lead role as Rey, it seemed like she was on top of the world, as that movie broke box office records and turned her into a star overnight. And even though The Force Awakens wasn't all that original or fresh, the Star Wars brand was so healthy back in 2015, and there was so much fan goodwill that it was still received rather warmly by audiences, but under the highly incompetent supervision of executives like Kathleen Kennedy and writer-directors like J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, the Star Wars franchise ended up getting completely destroyed, in a way so bad that it'll probably be taught one day in business schools as an example for how to take a brand and run it into the ground. And even though Daisy Ridley herself didn't do anything terrible, the negative sentiments that fans have towards the Disney era of Star Wars, and specifically the Disney sequel trilogy, have always stuck to Daisy Ridley as well, which is probably the reason why we haven't seen her get too many high-profile roles since, or leading any kind of new blockbusters or franchises. And from those highs 10 years ago, when she was seemingly the face of the biggest entertainment franchise of all time, until today where she can barely secure a decent role in a decent movie, times have really changed for Daisy Ridley. So when I heard that Ridley has a new movie called We Bury the Dead, which is something of a horror thriller, I was curious to see if this film could turn her career around after a series of failures, and as fate would have it, I ended up seeing an advanced screening of the movie so I can give you my review prior to its official release. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the plot of the movie and what I think about it. But before we begin, if it's not too much trouble, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really help an independent movie reviewer like myself.
Do it.
The movie starts off by showing us a series of news reports documenting a major disaster that was accidentally caused by the US military after they misused some kind of experimental weapon that ended up killing 500,000 people in Tasmania. And unfortunately for Daisy Ridley, her husband happened to be in Tasmania at the time of the disaster, and even though it seems clear that he's no longer alive, Daisy decides to go to Tasmania and to volunteer to assist the military forces there by joining a body retrieval unit where she and others go around looking for bodies of people that died in that catastrophe. When she gets there, Ridley learns that in some cases it turns out that the bodies are still sort of moving even after they're dead, so they're sort of like zombies and they need to be disposed of. And this is already where the movie is kind of dumb, because if you're a military that retrieves bodies and zombies, are you really going to let some lady from another country whose husband was killed there come in and start working with you? Because you'd think that bringing somebody like that into the fold while they're grieving is rather risky, especially when they're not sure what happened to their loved ones and they're still sort of looking for them. And that's exactly why upon her arrival, she starts thinking, how do I get away from the army here and go by myself to find my husband's body? Thinking to herself that maybe he's a zombie and he's still alive and they can communicate or something. Now, in the movie, we're told that maybe these zombies still have unfinished business of sorts, which is why they're not dying, and that's why they're still alive, but this is really explained very poorly, and the fact that each zombie behaves differently, it makes it all the more confusing. The movie is then divided into three parts. Part 1 is Daisy Ridley getting used to being on this body retrieval unit, where she gets teamed up with another guy who helps her find bodies and zombies. But then she convinces him that they need to run off on his motorcycle and find her husband, and for no apparent reason, he agrees to take her right away, not even thinking about the consequences. But then they're both stopped by some military man who ends up arresting them, and while Daisy's friend with the motorcycle manages to run away, she's kept in a cell until the military man is willing to release her on the condition that she joins him for a meal at his home, and then afterwards he would supposedly help her find her husband. However, once Daisy Ridley arrives at the military man's home, it turns out that all of his loved ones are dead, including his pregnant wife, and it becomes clear that he's somewhat delusional and has bad intentions towards Daisy. He then pressures her to dance with him and dress like his wife, and the situation becomes tense as Daisy tries to run away and ends up hiding in the same room where his wife is, and she's apparently a zombie who's pregnant with a baby, which is why he doesn't want to kill her. Next thing you know, Daisy manages to run into a bar next to his home, and there's a lot of other zombies there, which I guess he's keeping tied up, although I'm not 100% sure why. Then, again, the military man approaches her, trying to fondle her or something, but she manages to, get rid of him and then take his car and run away. And after a few more dumb developments, she does end up getting to the hotel resort where her husband was supposed to be on a business trip. And once she finally arrives and finds her husband, it turns out that her husband died while spending the night with another woman, and he didn't turn into a zombie, so he's just dead. Then, all of a sudden, and with no explanation, the guy with the motorcycle that ran away earlier conveniently shows up, and Daisy Ridley tells him that she and her husband couldn't have kids, so there was tension between them, and that she had initially cheated on him, so that's why he had cheated on her on this business trip. But if there was so much tension and anger and hatred between them, why would she want to travel to Australia to put her life at risk and find a body that was already dead to begin with? Yeah, don't think about it. Anyhow, now Daisy and the motorcycle guy hit it off, and it's suggested that they're doing naughty things together. Then we see them traveling and getting rid of zombies when suddenly they encounter a woman zombie who had just given birth, and she looks like the zombie wife of that creepy military man. But it turns out that this wife had the baby, and the baby is in a field. So Daisy Ridley runs, picks up the baby, and now she finally has that baby that she's always wanted. And at that moment, the movie abruptly ends. Now, I don't know if you thought what I told you was interesting or not, but let me tell you something. Sitting in the theater and watching this was beyond a snooze fest. It was so boring. I mean, if you've ever watched a crappy episode of The Walking Dead from the later seasons where Carol is walking around by herself in a forest for an hour, this movie kind of feels like one of those episodes. And even worse, I think that The Walking Dead has more menacing zombies than this movie. We barely see any zombies. They don't seem like a threat. You never really think anything bad is going to happen to any of the people here, which really lowers the stakes in a movie that should be high stakes in that department. And I'm sure there will be a few people, like some critics on Rotten Tomatoes that happen to love this movie, that'll say, well, it's kind of a thinking man's zombie movie, it's very philosophical. But I call bullshit on that. In reality, there's pretty much no justification for this movie. I think it develops in a very dumb way, nothing really makes any sense, and the worst part of it, it just doesn't capture you, it doesn't keep you invested or interested. There's no part of this movie where I really felt engaged with what was going on screen. If I had to say anything positive about it, I would say that the cinematography in some parts wasn't terrible. There were some nice views of where they were filming in Australia, and it didn't look bad for a relatively low-budget production, and the performances were all right, although nothing spectacular. Now, I don't know that a different actress would have really made a difference when it comes to this movie, but specifically Daisy Ridley is not the type of actress that could rise above the poor material she's given to work with. An actor like Denzel Washington could do something like that, but she ain't no Denzel Washington, that's for sure. It's also worth mentioning that Ridley's attempt at an American accent wasn't all that great either, and it definitely slipped at times. Regardless though, at the end of the day, I suspect that once this movie is released, it's going to be a major flop, although maybe not an expensive one, because it didn't look like such an expensive movie. But as opposed to the strange praise that it's getting from these more mainstream critics, I can't say that I think that this is a good movie. And if I had to give this movie a score, where anything below a 60 is considered a failing grade, I suppose I would give this movie a 35 out of 100, which means that it's a fail. But if you want to keep getting these type of early exclusive reviews from an independent movie reviewer like myself, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it would really mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching, my friends. Thank you, and good day.
I am such an awesome guy. I make so many videos.